I think the way you started it was fine. Like just
Today?
now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just go for it.
Or
Hi guys. It's been a while. It's been a year since I posted. And do I look better?
it's a little questionable.
Today I'm joined by a good friend of mine. This is Bonnie. She's been on this podcast before.
Hello.
And the reason why I had asked her to come is because she has been with me for this entire past year of life, and there's a lot to process. And I just thought it would be nice to do like a year recap because it's literally been 1 year since I posted. So for anybody who was a dying hard fan of this podcast, I'm so sorry. But Mr. Poon needed some time.
Needed a full year.
I needed a full-on year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the last episode, if I recall correctly, it was with Catherine. And I was talking about how I wanted to, or I was in kind of like a interesting mindset in Victoria, and how I felt like I had a little bit of anger. And I think I wanted to record episodes without having that. And then I knew that coming back to the mainland was a good place for me to reflect. So then I moved back on September 1st last year. So a year ago tomorrow. Today's the 31st of August. And I came back because I knew that I needed some time for myself to take care of myself and to process a lot of things that happened in Victoria, which we can talk about on this podcast episode. And all I can say is that a lot has happened in the last 365 days. And I'm still processing it, you know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's been like that process of you coming back. You didn't have a job yet. No,
Okay,
right?
girl,
No.
everybody listening, like, if you know me, I'm somebody who likes to know what's happening or like a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think luckily I've been better at it. I've been better with like sitting in that, you know, it's okay not to know what's happening. But I moved here. I decided to move here 2 weeks before I moved.
That was a really I
Right?
can't remember.
And I remember
yeah.
telling you, and you're like, "What? Oh, okay, yeah, okay." But I had
Okay, you're coming back?
no work plans, nothing. I had nothing. So I think that it was. I knew there's a part of me now that I think about when I have peace in a decision, when I feel peace with something, I know that it's something that God wants me to do. And I remember when I prayed a lot about it, because I think in around July and August, I really felt torn of leaving Victoria or coming back, because staying in Victoria was really hard in a lot of ways, and we can talk about that soon. But then I wanted to come back because I wanted to feel that support and love from this community again. But then I also felt like it was me escaping, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then I prayed to God, because the only thing, honestly, that was holding me back was finance, right? Was rent, because rent is insane. And then, you know, from a mutual friend, I was able to stay for really cheap, and then decided and left, right? And I remember telling my parents, and they were sad. Actually, the day that I left, I remember it was early in the morning. I took a really early ferry, and my dad kind of helped me load some of my stuff. And as I drove up the driveway, I could see him in my mirror, and he was crying. And like, my dad doesn't really show that much emotion like that, and like,
It's like a movie scene.
yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
movie scene. And I just know that I cried the entire way to the ferry. But yeah, so I moved back with no plan and was unemployed for 8 months.
Wait, how did your parents, like, do you remember like what they said to you, or like how they felt when you first brought it up to them, like, hey, like this is what I'm thinking about? Or
So this was probably in maybe July or maybe even August. But I remember there was one day where I was hanging out with Christina, and she just randomly brought up like, Josh, like, you're not happy. And I was like, what? She said, you're not happy here, and I really hope that you can go back. And I remember just like being like, whoa, okay, yeah, I am not happy. But then I went home that same night. I went up the stairs. I remember before it got renovated, those stairs, and I was just talking to my dad, and then he said, have you ever thought about moving back to Vancouver?
He brought it up first.
Just suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait, what? He's like, you're not happy here. And I remember being like, what? Like, because for me, when I went back, I knew my parents were really happy I was home. And to hear that from him was hard. And I think even my mom, you know, she said, like, she wants me to be happy, and she knows I'm happier over here. And I know it's hard for her too, for me to go. And even with the day I left, she didn't even wave in the window. I think she couldn't. Yeah. And it was only a year, because but I think it was a much needed, I came back at a much needed time.
Yeah. At the time, do you know, like, you knew that you're going to move here for like a long time, like, kind of like indefinitely, don't know when you're going to come back kind of thing?
I think I was ready to go, like, this will be my main place. Yeah. I think I feel that. You know, okay, this is a side note. This is way back in like 2018 when I first came here. I lived in Coquitlam and for my teaching practicum. And I remember thinking, you know, I would love to live in Coquitlam. That's all I thought about. It's just like, you know, that's kind of where I want to be. And you see the video, I'm in my new place, and I know it's not technically like heart of Coquitlam, but on the address it says Coquitlam. And I think I was thinking about it the other week. I was just like, how did I move from New West to Burnaby to Surrey, and then now I'm here, right? Like, I was like, that's like definitely God's timing and like God providing, right? But like, it was just really cool for me to be like, I did make it here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So wild.
Okay, so September, you moved in to your friend's place.
Yes.
Which was conveniently 5 minutes away from me.
Okay, let's just say that Bonnie and I spent a lot of time together. And so because I was unemployed, literally, because Bonnie works at a job, you know, till like noonish or whatever, and then we would just work out almost every day. And then...
Yeah, we got a gym membership. In September.
And then we worked out, and then we also went to a lot of church stuff together, and like so we just did a lot of things together. So Bonnie and I were kind of like around each other a lot, and we were like, we call it tread talk. Maybe we should start this. It's actually called tread talk now. Screw the open closet.
Basically, our workout was like 30 minutes on the treadmill, and then we'll spend all that time just ranting.
Hey, we made the time go by so fast. Mm-hmm. And then we would do other things too, not just the treadmill, but it was like, it's tread talk time. And we were always like, I say we were doing like abs or core before, we're like, wait, hold it, wait until tread talk. Like, don't tell me yet. But it was actually a really good time, because I felt like I actually was resting. I remember that. I remember like being like, I had no job, so a little bit of anxiety with that, but it was a weird calmness. And thinking back on it, it was definitely an escape in some way, I think. For those who don't know, my mom has a sickness, and when I went back to Victoria, I had to process a lot of that. And I also, when I shared this podcast and I came out, I had to deal with a little bit of backlash, and you know, hitting closer to home with some people and getting hurt from some friends that I thought supported me. And so when I moved back here, it was nice to finally be a part of church community again. And then also felt like I had a bit of space from the situation that was happening at home with my mom. And it was hard to be away, but at that point, we finally got a diagnosis of my mom's sickness, and her health is pretty stable now, so praise God. But when we finally had the diagnosis and we were finally able to share with everybody, because we didn't want to share until we knew what was happening, it was like the sign for me to go, okay, it's okay for you to go.
You had a rest of mind.
Mm-hmm.
You had peace of mind.
And so when I came here, I remember like September to November, it was like I was just living life. I remember just like not really feeling that anxious about stuff, having a great time, like connecting with people again, meeting new friends here, and yeah, it was a really peaceful
You felt very
time.
refreshed.
Yeah, I remember that. And then it went downhill. But yeah, so then Bonnie and I spent a lot of time together. That's all. Yeah.
So that was September, October, November.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think November was the first breakdown I had. And I say first because there were many. It was the first one I had because it was around the time where my EI had run out. I was supposed to go on a date and the guy forgot the day of.
Oh
remember
my God,
that?
yeah.
And we were supposed to have dinner and then he's like, oh, sorry, I forgot. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I remember
Were you already there?
No, I was just getting ready at home because we're planning to meet up at this area, and then he forgot and he had dinner already. You know. Anyways, let's move on. So I think.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I think that it was tough because it was like financial, then like love, and then just feeling like inadequate. And I remember it was a Sunday. It was at drop-in. We were playing at volleyball drop-ins at our church. And I remember just feeling super overwhelmed. And there was someone that was there that triggered something in me. And I remember feeling so confused of what happened in Victoria. Because I think I kind of just like...
been pushing it away.
Put it away, yeah. And I remember like stepping out of the gym crying. And I remember you found me. And then that was the first kind of breaking point of like, what is happening? Why did these things happen to me? God, what do you want with me? What do you want? Like, why can't, you know what I mean? Just like a lot of questions. And at that point, I already told myself to give me grace in terms of finding a job, to not rush it, to be okay with waiting. But I remember there was a part where I just like started questioning a lot. Yeah. And that was the first kind of like glimpse of the winter blues, I think.
Yeah, winter was starting to come. I think you were starting to feel maybe like insecure about where you were or what you were doing, like maybe a little bit loss of direction. Right.
And I remember just like at that point too, like me coming here was supposed to be a time for me to be happy, right? And I remember thinking, I don't want to tell my parents. I can't tell them that I'm struggling. I can't, because they already have so much on their shoulders. And I felt like not a good kid in a certain sense of like not finding a job, not, you know, all
and you were
things.
Applying around when you came here.
Yeah.
So it was like 2 months of trying to apply and not finding anything.
And I think there's a point where I felt like I was fine, and like I'm like, you know what, it's okay. Sorry, what was that noise? And so I think that I was just, there's a little bit of a breaking point. Yeah. And then after that, you know, luckily, actually, because of that, I got closer to some of my friends, Kitty and Joel and them, because I remember Kitty came to find me outside, and then we weren't close at that time, but she asked me if I wanted to talk about it. And I think it was the first time where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to tell them what's happening. Like, I don't care what they think. I don't really worried about what they think, because I could tell that they were kind people. And then, you know, from there, it was just strangers to like close friends, because I was so willing to be like, this is what happened in Victoria. This is how people treated me. I feel bad and hurt. And for them to be like, that is not cool. And like that, I'm so sorry that happened to you, really helped validate that I wasn't going insane, right? That I wasn't overthinking. Crazy. Yeah, I wasn't overthinking it, because I felt like that. I felt that maybe it's me being too sensitive. Maybe it's me being like, maybe it's my fault. Yeah. And
these are things that people have told you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, it's your fault, or you're being too sensitive about these things.
Yeah. But like, just imagine just like going through these kind of similar things over and over again. It kind of makes you think a certain way, right? It makes you think that, you know, you are a part of all these situations, so it probably is your fault that it's not working out, you know? So it was in a way a blessing, because then I was able to connect with other people and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then winter blues. Yeah. So
November and December.
November, December, January, February. So okay, I must say that I think the winter blues hit me like a drug. I think it was the worst one I've had in an extended period of time. And around this time, it was, I would go back to Victoria like for Christmas and like for other things, and it was really hard because I kept reminding me of what happened. And I remember coming back on New Year's crying. Like I had a full-on meltdown, a breakdown, because it kind of came to reality that these things are still happening in Victoria, or my mom is still sick and she's not the same person that she was before, or these people hurt me and I see them and they clearly don't want to be a part of my life, right? So when I came back, I was like, oh, all that stuff that happened last year that you try to avoid because you were teaching and all that stuff, let's process that now. Mm-hmm. I never had a chance to. And I think that's why January and February was so hard, because I had to
actually sit down
in it.
Yeah.
And I had nothing to distract me. Nothing other than like working out with Bonnie and like church stuff. I literally, like, I remember sitting in my friend's, where I was staying with my friend's place, just sitting there in those thoughts in the dark or whatever. Just like, all I'll say is there's a lot of Snapchat stealing photos because usually I'm just lying on the ground or like whatever. But I actually had to process it for the first time, and it was very overwhelming. Yeah. Because I had to come to the terms that it was reality and that I wasn't going insane.
Yeah, I think it was hard because like I'm only with you during our little workout, and then I have to go to work.
Yeah.
So like you had a lot of free time that you had to like fill up, mm-hmm. right? And at the same time you want to save money, mm-hmm. and then at the same time, like your room, the place that you're staying in, you only had like a room to yourself. That was your own like private space.
Yeah.
So it was really like small, right? So you just kind of sit in those thoughts when you are free, or like there's only so much time you can distract yourself with games or mm-hmm. yeah.
And I think like there is a healthy amount of thinking. I mm-hmm. think that it is good to reflect and think about your actions and think about life, but when you sit in it for so long, it can get pretty harmful, because you start spiraling and you start overthinking into these negative thoughts, right? And then when you keep thinking these thoughts or being told these things, you start to believe them, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why, when I was growing up, it was tough. I was said all these things were said to me about, me and my character and whatever. And then when you get told that so many times, you start to believe that's kind of who you are. Mm-hmm. So I think that was what happened. And it was a really hard period of time because I couldn't get out of those thoughts because, I had nothing else to distract me. And like at the same time, I'm glad I wasn't distracted either, because past Mr. Prune would just get so busy that I would not think about everything. So I think that there's a blessing and a curse at the same time when I think back on it, right? And I think, thinking back on it, I was very blessed to have certain people there that were there for me and they were able to talk to me and whatever, but it was still a really hard time. Yeah. And also it's around this time where like I also like was dealing with feelings, and I think that added another layer to me feeling lonely and me feeling inadequate and unlovable, right? And because I've always had that thought in me because of all the things that have happened to me, and with that and it not working out and like all that stuff, like I think it added an extra layer to that situation. Mm-hmm.
You think a lot of it was like you felt like a lot of people kind of let you down, or weren't supportive of you?
I think in a way abandoned. Mm-hmm. I felt very betrayed. I don't think I've ever thinking back in like high school and those situations, like I felt I was betrayed, right? And mm-hmm. but at that time I was like, no, it's my fault, it's like it's like it's literally just like me blaming myself for all the bad things that people did to me. But this time it was like, no, like they betrayed, they turned their back on me, right? And like me being confident in saying that, I think was different than before. And I would say like generally, like I think you can attest to this too. I'm a lot more confident in me and like my body and who I am, and I stand up for myself more than I have in the past, right? And so that's a good thing of what I've learned in the last couple of years. But I think this situation is like a deeper core issue that's making me think about who I am as a person, right? It's my character, is, you know, the flaws in my character or whatever the case is. I think generally I am more confident, but recently it's been thinking a lot about who am I and like why are people treating me this way, even though I thought that I was kind and loving. You know what I mean? There's a weird like, okay, if they are reacting this way, does that mean I'm actually not a good person? You know what I mean? Like, if people are treating
you're
me
unsure of what you did wrong.
Exactly. Like, if people are treating me terribly, then is that a reflection of me? Which it isn't, right? And so that's what I've been wrestling a lot with. Yeah.
I think like your initial reaction to most of these situations is that you always look inward first of like, is this something that I did? Right? So I think there is a part of you that tends to blame yourself first before you you're like, oh no, actually I think the way that I feel is actually very validated. Yeah.
And I think it stems from childhood, right? Like it just stems from my relationship with family. Actually, I had a conversation with somebody recently talking about how so many things are so rooted in family trauma. Like our characteristics, our like spheres, everything's rooted in your childhood, and that's why being a parent is scary. So if you ever want to be a parent, just like maybe go to therapy, deal with some stuff first, because it's not easy. And anyways, it's a side note. Therapy plug-in.
Was there something in your like childhood or like trauma, do you think, that made you kind of think this way about yourself?
Yeah.
Like with your parents and your own family?
So I think kind of like a lot of times when I was younger and I would share something to, I think generally my mom. My dad was kind of chill, so it was kind of nice, but kind of MIA in the sense that he was always busy with church. So I found that whenever I would share something that was hard or whatever, either it would be respond with, I've been through something worse, or just get over it, or you're being too sensitive.
They would tell you that.
So it was never like, oh, it's okay, you'll be okay, blah, blah, blah. Like there were, I recall there were moments, but were very small moments, like, but generally it was very much like, they didn't give me the time. They just like, just go, let's deal with it, you know? And I felt really unsafe. And I think it doesn't help that I had that layer of sexuality, that I was really scared of sharing it, because things that were happening at school were about that, right? About how my friend was close to me. I came out to him, and then like he one day was like, I don't feel comfortable with you. Right? How do I share that with my parents, right? Or how do I share that, you know, these people were bullying me or saying these rumors about me, right? That's not something that's easy to talk about. So I think a mixture of like that with my family, and then my family has a habit of shoving things under the rug. So like it's hard to talk about certain things, and then with things happening at school with the rejection and all that stuff, it just kind of kept like defining, oh, this is kind of, I guess, how I am, how I should be treated. Do you know what I mean?
How do you think that ties in with your like friendships or the way that you think about them? Because you do have very supportive friends.
Yes.
And then there are other friends that like did betray you.
Yes. Yeah. So how do you feel about like friendship now?
Or how does that trauma kind of, do you feel like you kind of bring that into your friendships, or you may not be able to like open up to them? I do. I have come to a place where I'm a pretty open book. So for those who know me, so you ask me a question, I'll just share. And I think I've come to a place where like I'll just share, because you know it doesn't matter. Life's so short, and if people don't support me, they don't know me, right? But at the same time, the unhealthy thing is, if someone treats me poorly, my first thought is, okay, I get it. Versus like, why, like, they shouldn't do that. Why are they doing that to me? Like my first thought is like, yeah, I get it. That's fine. You know what I mean? Like that's not. Is that you kind of internalizing it?
I think so. Just being it makes sense. I'm used to this.
What's going through your mind when you think that?
Like when I say,
because outwardly you're saying like,
yeah,
like, okay,
Yeah. I think
So
there's a
what's going on
part of me that
internally?
like shuts off, maybe, right? And like kind of I distance myself and I don't talk about it. I am really good at defending people, but not myself. So like if someone hurts Bonnie, but if someone hurts me, I'm like, it's fine. And you know that. Yeah. And so I think that like recently it's been better at like if someone does do something, I am able to vocalize it more and like I think share it with that person or like with you even be like, oh, this person hurt me. But in the past I would just like bottle it in. And I think that's why in the last year there's been a lot of anger because I bottled up a lot of anger I had towards people because I didn't want to say what they did to me was hurtful or hurt me or whatever. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. and then when you do that, like you keep bottling in.
Yeah.
Eventually comes to like a breaking point where you end up just breaking down, like just the smallest trigger would just
and I think that's what's been happening very recently. And you know, it's interesting to think that when I was younger, I think anyone could attest to this, that I was not an angry child. Like I did not, sure, maybe I was annoying or whatever, but like I was
You're
never
still annoying. Just kidding.
This is the end of the episode. Thanks for I never showed that part of me. It was always me being like, oh, it's okay, no, don't worry, I'm sorry, it's my fault, always. And I think recently the anger has been coming out and I don't know how to control it. And so I think it was the day in November where I broke down. I remember I was getting really angry. I felt like I was fuming in my heart because I think I was just not playing well, and then like I got really, really like frustrated with certain people, and it's just like, and I'm like, what's happening? That's why I stepped out. I was like, what is happening? What is happening? What is happening? Right? Because I'd never expressed that much anger before. Yeah. And I remember back in Victoria, I think this is like last October, November. Two October, Novembers ago. I remember
2 years ago.
Yeah, my mom was pushing my buttons like crazy, and I blew up, and blew up. Started yelling at them, and then I think I talked about this before, and then I had a panic attack because I was so overwhelmed with my emotions because I never have expressed it or let it come out like that. I think you can say, if you've been my friend since too long, okay, you've been my friend since like 2013.
Yeah.
And I don't think you see me that mad.
No.
Right? And like that's just I don't really get angry. I get frustrated, but I don't get angry that much. But I think that also it's just because I hold it in a lot.
Were you feeling angry at like other people in that moment, or more at yourself, or like was it kind of just like a mixture?
Yeah. And then it just kind of came out, but then at the same time I didn't want it to come out, right? I just like no, right? Because I think it'll be really scary. But my students have seen me mad anyways, so yeah. And I think that thinking back on like, we're talking about whatever to February, like it was just a lot of processing of Victoria and all that stuff. And unfortunately, in around that time too, I had a close friend who kind of hurt me pretty bad. And I remember that feeling of confusion of why is this person treating me this way, even though I was so kind to them. And I remember we went to Victoria in February. It was around that time. And I was really confused because I didn't think I did anything wrong, but this person just kind of left me stranded, and it reminded me a lot about what happened in Victoria. And I remember that weekend, it was really hard because I like spiraled. And I think I started like questioning, like, it's always my fault. Why does this always happen to me? I guess it is me. It is, is something wrong with me? Blah, 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 blah. Why do people keep treating me this way? And I spiraled like pretty bad. And I remember that weekend, my eczema like spiked, and you still kind of see it on my neck. Yeah. But for those who don't know, I've had eczema my whole life. then in 2019, I like started taking these Chinese medicines, and it basically cleared up everything. But that weekend, my neck, like, I remember it feeling raw, and I was like, well, what is happening? And I remember just like that spiral of emotion of anger and confusion, and like,
you didn't understand what was happening.
No, I didn't know what was happening with myself. And I remember, you know, we were able to talk it out, but I remember how angry he was, and that triggered something in me that I think, you know, only recently I've kind of discovered what triggered me so much about it. But it made me feel really unsafe, and it made me think about, you know, Victoria and the people that hurt me, and go, like, maybe this is how I'm supposed to be treated. And I remember thinking back on, you know, when these people hurt me in Victoria and me having these conversations with them, my first thought, which is really sad, was maybe I shouldn't have come out, and then we could still be friends. Right? And that's me blaming myself, right? That's me going, oh, I want to sacrifice myself so that this person could be happy. But no, they could have treated me better. It wasn't me. It's not my fault that I'm sharing my journey and like my hardship. It's on them for not being loving, right? And for me to have to like wrestle with the idea of growing up, you know, in a church, and then getting kind of basically kicked out or rejected, and going, what did I do wrong? Like, I was raised in this church, I was taught to love just like everybody else was, but then they're not showing me any of that love, right? And so I think with the situation with my friend, it just, everything, being back in Victoria, seeing all these things, like being reminded of these people, and then this friend thing happened, it just like trigger after trigger after trigger after trigger. Yeah. And I remember like, yeah, like the winter blues just extended all the way for a while after that. I remember that. Yeah.
With that situation that happened, and that person being like really angry with you, they explained like maybe what happened, right? But then in that moment, did you feel like even after kind of understanding where they're coming from, that it wasn't quite like, it was almost for like still no reason, or you didn't really understand still?
It just didn't. I understood the reason of why this person acted a certain way, and I understand, but it's not an excuse, right? You don't treat people that treat you well or kindly like that.
They didn't take the time to actually like be open about what they were feeling.
Yeah. And like,
and they just kind of shut you out.
And I think that, yeah, you know, I'm glad that we were able to chat about it and like talk it out, and like that's for me a win to myself, because I was able to stand up for myself, which is huge. And that's, in the end, that's kind of where I came to a point where, you know what, no matter what happens, I want to be able to stand up for myself, because I feel like I owe that to myself, right? And which I was able to do. But I still couldn't wrestle with the idea of why that happened, right? And, you know, fast forward, it kind of lingered, right? It lingered for a long time until, you know, April. And I think that was a breaking point. And I remember, you know, I got into a really dark place, and I didn't think I would get there. And I'm very thankful that like God was with me, and like I have my friends there with me, like, but it was a really, really hard time. And I remember just the questions of like, what is wrong with me? What did I do? Right? I've always, my whole life, even though I was going through a lot of crap, I always try to be kind to people. I always try to be loving. I always put other people first. I've always done all these things, and then why is it that I always get treated like this, right?
Why do you think, like with this particular situation, like I felt like there was, like watching you as my friend, this situation impacted you a lot. I felt like it flipped like a switch for you, because I think these situations, they happen kind of over and over and over again. Like, do you understand, like maybe know why this situation impacted you so much?
And
Like maybe even more so?
great question. I think I'm still processing that, but I think that because one of the people that hurt me was somebody that was really close to me and I felt really safe and comfortable with, right? Like, and this person went through a lot of big life things with me, and like supported me in a lot of my endeavors and all these things. And so for them to turn their back on me was really hard. So then this current situation, for it to happen again, was like, why? Like, I guess it is my fault. And I still am, thinking a lot about why did it like affect me so much? Like, why did it like latch on to me so much? And I think that's probably partially the reason why, because I wanted to make it work. I wanted to like, clearly all these other things haven't worked out before. And what happened in Victoria, I recognized that it opened a really big wound and fear that I had in high school, which is the rejection, which is the loneliness. And, for 2015, when I first came out to VidCAC, our church, after that, I felt pretty safe. I felt very like secure in my friendships. I felt very supported. And even here back on the mainland, when I came out to our community here, I felt safe and loved and all these things. But what happened in Victoria, like, it opened something in me, like a really deep fear that I didn't think I would feel again, because the last time I felt that was before I came out in 2015. Right? And so I think with this situation, it just like added like salt to the wound of like, oh, this is what it's going to feel like again. And it was really hard to process that.
Yeah. I think a part of that is like, that's something that happened in Victoria, but you were able to kind of get, like, quote unquote, get away from it because you're here in Vancouver. But then now it has also happened. This situation has happened in Vancouver. So, like, do you go back to Victoria or just move somewhere else? Is this a sign? No, but like, like, I think it's just like, it felt like you couldn't escape from the situation because now it's happened here, where it's a place where you were excited about living here and like opening up to new people, right?
And I think like that's exactly that. Is my escape is not an escape anymore, right? My like, I remember Christina was just like, Josh, you're supposed to come here and like live your life and escape from all the drama that happened in Victoria. Why is stuff happening to you here? Right? And I think that's also why it's been tough, because I feel a little bit uncomfortable and unsafe now. And it's not a good feeling, first off, but it is what it is, I guess. But I think, I'm trying to process why it still bothers me so much, right? And I'm glad that this person and I are civil terms, and but I still think about it a lot. And I think I remember in April when I was in that dark place, and I remember that the thought of, I'm not happy, right? Like, same feeling I felt like before I left Victoria. Like, after that, those dark thoughts and moments, I'm not happy. What do I do about that, right? Why am I care so much about someone else's happiness, but how about me? Right? And I've talked about this before, but I never really think about myself much, like in terms of like my well-being, or like if I deserve anything good. I tend to care for other people more than I do myself. And so I think that moment, I remember going, okay, something has to change, right? This is not good for me or anybody around me, and I want to be happy so I can be a better friend or better uncle or better brother or son. And so it was just something flipped in me that night, I remember. And unfortunately, I did take some time away from church and our community, but I think it was much needed. I needed to get away from,
whatever was going on.
and like the triggers, right? And it's not a good thing to keep putting yourself in a situation where you can keep getting hurt, or but then a couple months later, I was finally felt a little more comfortable coming back, and I shared my testimony, my full-on testimony. Like, this is like from childhood all the way until now. And I think it was really hard to share what happened to me in my past. And actually, I cried the entire time. I didn't think that I would cry sharing about high school, because it's been so long and I processed it. But I think just like sharing it made me relive it, and it was a hard thing to admit that this is what happened to me. And it was really hard to admit that I got in a really dark place in April.
You were sharing with like a small group of people about what had happened.
Yeah. And it was hard to admit that. It's hard to admit to a friend that you're not doing well. Yeah. And I remember I didn't talk to anybody about it, because I think one, I didn't think I would ever get to this place. Like, it's been a long time since then. And I'm, like I said, blessed, and I praise God that He was with me in that moment. But I was at a place where I wanted to be vulnerable and share, like, this is what's happening, and that I want to share it as for accountability for myself. That, I want to get better, and I want to be happier, and I want to find more peace in God in this whole situation with life, right? Because clearly I'm still not in a peaceful headspace, even after all these years of processing things.
How did you feel after opening up about some, it was very difficult, and to kind of, because I was there when you were sharing, and you were crying pretty much the whole time as you were sharing. And that's really hard to watch, because I saw in your eyes that you were kind of reliving these moments. How do you feel afterwards, after being able to open up to so many people in that room? It was a small group, but it was also still a good amount of people.
I felt relieved, because I've been away for so long, that it was a testament that people cared and people loved me. And I didn't feel that. Yeah. And it's really hard for me to feel that, I think, just generally. And so after sharing, it just made me realize that, there are people that care about me and love me for who I am and want the best for me. And it sucks that I had to keep getting reminded these things all the time. But I think that, me being safe enough to share within this community is a huge step, right? But I felt better. I felt a lot more at ease with, the situations, and felt a little more at peace. Yeah. And I remember, having conversations with people about it after, right? And it was hard, because it's hard. It's a hard topic to talk about, but it's also hard to I know for my friends to bring it up, right? How do you address these things? And I don't want to talk much about it, but I'm okay now, which is I'm really glad that I'm in a good headspace now. But it is something that it makes you think a lot about life, right? And I just hope that whoever's listening, just always tell people that you love them, that you care, that just remind them, because you never know what people are going through. I know that I have people on my side that love me and care for me, and I know that I can always reach out, and I'm very blessed in that way. Yeah. But then that was around May, June-ish, and then I felt pretty okay, I think, generally. I felt there were moments here and there, but I remember like not being happy on my birthday, and then we celebrated 2 months after. Because who does that, anyways? I remember
It was a busy season, so you
oh my
celebrated
gosh,
it
I
2 months
had
later.
no capacity to do anything. Oh wait, backtrack. I actually around April, the dark months, I got a job, and I think that actually really helped me because now, not only did it help me with my confidence in myself and my ability as a person, and that I'm actually smart. I don't think that of myself. It helped me kind of have space to like not think about stuff. Right, I had something to work on and like
Look forward to.
look forward to, and financially it was more stable to do things. Actually, honestly, it came at a really good time, and so like just being able to work and all that stuff was really good, and for me, a routine actually is really good for me anyway. So it really helped me kind of go, hey, I'm going to do my work now. I have a little bit of time to think. Okay, church stuff or events, right? So like it was good that I had that.
You had some things kind of going for you now. Yeah.
Anyways, it's been good. So then like fast forward all the way until like end of July, had a 2 months later birthday party. And I remember sitting in that room and looking around thinking, wow, like these are all the people that I feel safe with and that love me, and feeling so sad and anxious. And I was like, why am I feeling this way? Like, why am I not happy? Right? And it was really sad to just sit there in that feeling. And I remember because I was sad and anxious, I just cleaned. I don't know. I started washing the
That was
dishes.
so weird on your birthday.
I stress clean. Anyways, so then I just didn't want to think about it. So I started cleaning a little bit. But anyways, it made me just like wake up and go, okay, clearly I'm still getting triggered by some stuff and feeling hurt from some situations, and I need to take a step back. Right? Like, how can I feel so sad on my birthday celebration? Right?
You think on that day, it was like there's still something like, yeah, you were kind of in a better place, and at the same time there's still things that were still triggering you or you're still holding on to, and you're like, I haven't addressed that yet.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what it was?
I think so. I think it's a mixture of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, okay, first up, I don't like my birthday anyway, so like, because I don't like a lot of attention. So I think that also, and just a lot of unaddressed things, just a lot of feeling of like insecurity and fear and not knowing how people react or whatever will trigger me or whatever. And it was just overwhelming. I remember that. I remember the day after, I had no capacity to like respond to anybody or talk to anybody. I just did not really respond to any messages because I was just so overwhelmed with this feeling of anxiety, right? And but it made me kind of like think about like, who am I? Like why do I feel like I can't be myself, right? And when I was sitting at that dinner, I thought 2 years ago when I first came out to this community here and I had my birthday party, I was so happy. Like, I was genuinely so full of joy and peace. What happened? Right? And that was like a wake-up call for me, I think. And so after that, I kind of started like backing off a bit from things. Yeah. And trying to figure out what's happening. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, like, I know that a lot has happened, and I'm very thankful. Cause when I think back on it, like everything that's happened in the last year, like God has always been there, right? And like He's always provided for me in people, in my job coming at the perfect time, my interview coming at a perfect time, my me getting this place, like it all worked out. And I remember feeling so anxious about everything, but at the same time, I knew that God provides, right? And so just looking back on everything that's happened, and like, yeah, it was not a fun time. It was a really hard time. I think it's probably one of the hardest years for me to like really wrestle with myself, like who I am, because I feel like I lost myself. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm really me in front of people sometimes. And it was apparent when I went back to Victoria a couple weeks ago.
So this is
August. Yeah.
Okay.
And just hanging out with my family and going back home to a beautifully renovated house and being like, I don't feel that pressure, that weird weight anymore. Like, this is a brand new beautiful place, and my room isn't my room anymore. Like, I remember just feeling at peace there. And I remember, hanging out with my friends and then them asking me, are you okay? And me going, oh, I clearly can't hide it anymore, right? And so finally being able to share what happened last year to them. I didn't tell anybody, really.
Oh, you didn't tell anybody in Victoria what had happened.
Yeah.
And you finally opened up about it.
And I finally told them. And for them to validate me and to be angry for me and to be sad with me. I mean, but for me, at the same time, I was just myself with them. I could say whatever I want. I had no fear. I felt so at peace there. I felt more at peace in Victoria, and I didn't want to leave. And that's a huge change to before, where I was really anxious going back home. And that was like, okay, well, clearly I don't feel fully safe here anymore. And that's really sad, because it used to be my safe space, right? I would say, like, now, yeah, I do get, these weird waves of anxiety, but it's not as debilitating or, as before, earlier in the year. But it kind of just pushes me to, like, want to.
Do you think it was like mainly changing your mentality around it, or do you think there's some things that you're like physically doing like to take care of yourself that made it better?
I think it's a mixture of stuff, which is like taking a step back from situations that trigger me, and exercising more regularly, and distracting myself with doing too much. It's not a good habit. But definitely a mixture of stuff. I do find that, okay, she was gone for the entire month.
Oh, so, yeah. So during this time when Josh took a step back from like church and everything, I was literally gone on a trip for the entire August. So it's like, okay, see ya. Hope you do well this month without me.
I was like, why'd you leave me? Anyways,
and this would have been our first summer together, and I left you.
What's really funny is that every summer I would go back home to Victoria, and then this year I decided to stay because I'm working, and then she just leaves. Also, it's kind of like, how a couple years ago it was like 2 years ago, we've been friends for like maybe 8 years at that time, and it was the first time you celebrated my birthday.
Yeah.
Anyways, side note. Anyways, so
I sense some bitterness.
What were we talking about?
Just the month of August. Like, I was away.
Oh yes.
So you were kind of like on your
own, fend to myself.
Yeah, on your own, and you were also in the process of getting your new place.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like August luckily was busy in that sense that there was so much behind the scenes to get this place, right? And then, but also I just kind of refocused my energy on different things. So from Victoria, reconnecting with people in Victoria, and then making more effort, because I think because I live here, no matter, automatically I kind of left them behind in some way. Right?
You live here in Vancouver, so you kind of left your friends.
Yeah. So it's kind of like now making more of an effort and energy to put in time with people that care and love me, and people in Victoria, whether it's here or Victoria, and like this feeling like I could just feel safe with certain people, right? And not putting myself in a situation where I feel fearful or hurt or whatever. And I don't blame my friend for what happened. It just definitely just triggers something in me that I'm still processing a lot right now. And so I'm glad that, you know, we are civil, and I'm glad that, you know, we were able to chat, and like I learned a lot from it, and a lot about myself, and a lot about how, you know, I still have a lot of things that I need to work on as a person. And but I also need to not allow myself to get hurt again and again and again and again, right? And
do you think a part of it was like kind of defining boundaries for yourself?
Yeah,
like healthy boundaries?
Yeah, because I think I just grew up just catering to everybody, and I was always trying to be the bigger person. I would always bring things up. I would always apologize. Like, you can ask my parents. They talked to me about how I was a good kid because of that. But I would always be the one to try to reconcile and to deal with the situations, to the point where it wasn't even on me to do that. Right? And that's
like you're apologizing for things that you shouldn't be apologizing for. Exactly.
So I'm just trying to learn about that, and learning that a lot of my traumas come from my relationship with my mother. And that's going to be in a whole episode.
Next episode.
Next time. But that's kind of the yearly recap, I guess, of what's been going on.
We're in September now. Almost tomorrow.
Almost tomorrow. It's tomorrow's 2-year anniversary of this podcast, even though I haven't posted for an entire year.
It still counts.
Still counts. So for those huge fans, we're back just for today. We wait for the next year really recap. But I'm excited. I do feel like I am reconnecting with who I am, and because I am somebody who I like to have fun. I like to just, joke around. I like to do all these things, but I felt like wasn't kind of like that. I felt like I was not connecting with people. I felt like, I had a really hard time with it, and that's not kind of who I am. And it sucks that I kind of felt like I lost myself this year a lot. And it makes sense, right? It makes sense because I was just...
You were going through a rough time.
I was going through a rough time, and honestly, all these things that happened to me, it makes you question a lot about you, right? Like, why did all these people do this to me, right? But, what I've learned, too, is that I think I try to find security in those friendships, specifically guy friendships, because trauma. But I put that above not only God, but myself. Right? And I think that I have to learn to let God take charge, and let him, work in my heart and work on other people's hearts. And honestly, it kind of puts less pressure on me to but I think I am, honestly, my life goal is just to find peace. And I feel like whenever I make a decision or I feel like I do something and I feel peace in my heart, I know that God is with me. Right? And I don't know what this next 365 days will bring, but
starting tomorrow, September, maybe we'll see. We'll do another
yearly recap.
The next episode will be a year from now.
Girl, I'm gonna be bald or something at that time. But I thinking a lot because we're both turning 30 next year.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And so we talked about this before, but now it's just kind of like I have goals and things I want to work towards, and I'm excited for this new space to have my own space and to just do me. And I hope that my friends who are listening can also encourage me and keep me accountable to just do things without fear in terms of, pursuing different pursuits or working on different skills or learning new things or trying new things. Like, I kind of just want to do that now for myself versus, all the things that have happened this year. And for the people that have hurt me, and, maybe you're listening to this right now, just know that I don't have any hate towards you. I have come to terms with it and have forgiven people because we all make mistakes, and so I hope that people also forgive me for things I've done. But I think there's a point where, when it's not healthy and it's hurtful, maybe God doesn't want me to be in that situation. And I remember seeing this post that, like, if God really provided these things for you or these people for you, you would feel his peace, right? And I thought that was it just struck me to the core, because there are people that I feel peace with. There are things that I have, I feel peace with these situations, right? I feel peace with these friendships or these family members or whatever. And I feel like God has placed those people. And I think also that God has really brought strangers in this year to my life who have loved and supported me, because people before in my life can't do that for me right now. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think that it's a beautiful thing that God has provided, not just, job, finance, this place, like,
but new friendships,
like people.
Yeah, people.
And it's a really beautiful thing. So that's the yearly recap. What too long didn't read. Like when people write like the too long didn't read, they write like a 2-sentence thing.
No, I don't.
The too long didn't read is Josh was depresso, and now he's very expresso of his thoughts. That's bad.
Very cheesy.
Okay, anyway, too long didn't read. Basically, just like this year was a lot of processing, a lot of healing, a lot of.
But you're taking the new steps forward.
Yes.
Yeah, and looking forward to new things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
That's a conclusion of this episode, that he's fine.
Yeah, anyways, I haven't done this in so long. When we were setting this up, I didn't know how to do anything, but we're good. Bonnie and I are going to go eat some good food.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, you're hugging me. He's hugging me.
Okay, that's enough. Okay, see you guys. Bye.
Okay, bye.
So after we finished recording, Bonnie and I went to hang out, and we were just chatting in the car and just chatting, and basically could have been another episode. We were joking about how we should have brought mics into it, but we're talking a lot about grieving and how this past year has been a lot of grieving of people, friendships, relationships, past, but also just grieving people that are still around and learning how to navigate that when those people were there for you in very core parts of your life and help shape you and define you, and when those people leave in unfortunately difficult, harsh ways, it kind of shakes you to your core, because it makes you think about who you are. And I think grieving was a perfect term for me this year. I just felt that was kind of what I have been doing recently. And we also talked about how we learned to love, and how I was taught to love a certain way, and to recognize that a lot of it is very unhealthy. And I've learned a lot about self-sacrifice, but to the point of ignoring my own needs and not having boundaries and just caring for how the other person feels. I disregarded how I feel and how hurt I was, and it led me to very toxic and difficult relationships. And just because you're taught to love a certain way doesn't mean that you should love the same way. And so I've been learning about how to not only love other people in a healthy way, but how to love myself and how God would love me. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of this podcast, and I do hope that this episode will help you or someone that you care about. But I pray that God is with you, that He gives you comfort and peace, and just know that He loves you and I love you. And hopefully we will see, you will hear from me from another episode sometime soon when I have the capacity to. But thank you so much for your patience. See you next time. Bye.